Hello, this is Ian. Welcome to another video. We're doing part 4 of the Legend of the Doggo, which is another excerpt of after the books, It was just something I wanted to do, and yeah. We're on chapter 8 right now, out of 13 chapters, so we still got a little bit to go, but not horrible. Though I didn't think it would be this much. I don't want to do 30 minutes per thing. 20 minutes seems like a good amount, give or take. Like, I'd like 10 minutes, but 30 minutes is just too much. 20 minutes seems like a good amount. It just depends on what you guys like. Because the shorter something is, the harder, the longer, the not so much watched it is. So, you get more material from it, I guess. Chapter. If you haven't watched any of the other videos yet, or other parts, be sure you do so, because sorry, spoilers, definitely spoilers. You don't want to be spoiled, now do you? Unless you're someone who likes to read the first of every one and the last of every one. I have people like that, unfortunately, because like for my stories, like Hero in Need, the first one, before the Hero of Wonderburg came out, of course. Actually, I don't know how Hero of Wonderburg is gonna do, so that's very nerve-wracking. But like, Hero in Need did alright. It's just more people watched the first one and the last one more than the inside ones, even though they all had the same material. It's just like, it just wasn't as interesting. People like seeing the first one and then the last one. Well, hey, you do you. If you enjoy the story, however you want to enjoy it. But yeah, I should probably get into this. Chapter 8. Danny wasn't exactly sure where he was. He could feel something soft around him, like a blanket. But he wasn't sure if it was a dream or not. The last thing he'd remembered was falling on the cold, hard floor, too exhausted to do anything more. It rhymes. Had he been taken to some sort of safe house? What about Stampy? Was he safe? He wasn't sure. All of this didn't seem to make any sense. He slowly opened his eyes to find himself facing a wall on his side. The wall was a crisp off-white color, with the soft specks of gray, brown, and a little black in the walls. Specks seemed to be making some sort of pattern in those walls, as he stared at it for a long moment, trying to figure it out. His attention was diverted when he heard movement behind him. That caused him to freeze slightly. Where exactly was he? Should he sit up? Could he sit up? What was going on? And then he finally looked up, took up the courage to sit up in bed, as he'd been lying on for who knew how long. He could feel his stomach growling as he tried to look over his shoulder. Stopped when a piercing pain shot up from that shoulder. The dog winced as he went to touch the shoulder, which had been bandaged with fresh bandages. Wasn't too painful, if he didn't move it too much. Would you like me to get you something? A voice asked from behind him. The dog jumped as he managed to swing his feet over the edge of the bed and look over through a spruce doorway with a familiar man standing in front. The man was the same one who had destroyed all the guardians, and the one who had promised to get them out of there. Out of that awful place. Still, the dog wasn't too sure about him. After all, he didn't have to worry about his own safety now. The dog glanced away from the man as he turned to see Stampy lying on a bed across from him, blanket covering most of the bandages. A feeling of anger and regret filling him as he saw his friend, angered at the man who had let this happen, and regret for being unable to stop those things from hurting his friend. He should have done better. This shouldn't have happened. He'll be alright, the man replied reassuringly. Just some bed rest, healing potions at time. Are you sure? Danny asked him. Rose made the diagnosis, the man said with a smile. Trust that she knows what's best for the both of you. Rose is here? The dog asked curiously. Was. The man sighed. She had to leave to do other things. She put me in charge to keep things civil. Civil? What do you mean? Danny insisted. You know about those in the cause who don't believe Debbie did something wrong? The man asked slowly. Yeah, we ran into them before he got abducted by Mr. Ray's men, Danny said bitterly. You're not one of them, are you? Why would I have ensured you both got out of there if I wanted him dead? Last time he was left behind by our own men to die, and I wasn't about to let that happen again. Danny nodded. Okay. You still not sure about me, are you? Smith said softly. Danny shrugged. The dog shrugged casually. Yeah, guess you could say that. I've had a word with Sam, promising I wouldn't let anything happen. He insisted that I did, the man replied. It's too dangerous of a risk to bring him here. I had to make a compromise. Do you think those guys will try to anything? Danny asked. That's why I'm here, Danny, the man said with a smile. By the door? Isn't that, overdoing it? The dog asked skeptically. There's a secret entrance in this room that the both of you don't know about, the man said. I want to ensure that no one tries to use it. Oh, the dog said quietly. I guess that's fair. I'm taking my job seriously, Danny, the man said simply. Since there would be plenty of people who wouldn't be happy with me if I let them down. Plenty? Danny asked with a smile. Plenty, the man said with a smile. Okay, you have me, the dog sighed as he shook his head. That's good, the man nodded. I understand that Stampy would have every reason not to trust me, though, after what happened last time. What happened last time? Danny asked. He was imprisoned, tormented, beaten, and then betrayed by the people who were meant to make sure he was protected. The man sighed. They pretended to be on his side, but only wanted to see their power to destroy him. Use their power to destroy him. That's not good, Danny replied. No. The man replied quietly. That's why I have you in the same room to make it less tense. Probably a good idea, the dog chuckled. How long will it be, though, before he can return home? I don't know quite yet, but the sooner he can, the better, the man replied. Last thing we need is an attack and being forced to move him. Yeah, the dog nodded. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I agree, the man replied. Now, why don't we get something for you to eat? I'm sure you're pretty hungry. That'd be nice, the dog nodded as he looked back over at the cat, who was sound asleep in his bed, unaware of everything that was happening. Danny wasn't so sure what would happen next now. For the both of them, but he knew it would get through it. He had to believe that. Chapter 9? Yes. That's all I'm gonna say. Yes. Hours passed as the dog sat on his bed, having already eaten, and finding himself alone in the bedroom with a sleeping cat. The man who he had learned was named Peter, had gone off on a meeting, assuring that he wouldn't be long. Still, Danny couldn't help but feel uneasy, especially with what he had learned about those in the cause who wanted to hurt Stampy. Danny slowly glanced around the room, peeking out the window as the sun began to set, its ruby-red sun rays slowly starting to fade in the dark purple sky. Night was falling, and he wasn't sure if he would be able to sleep. He knew Peter would want him to get some rest, to help his shoulder heal, but the longer the silence stood, the more unease he felt about the entire situation. Something felt off for the canine, and he wasn't sure quite what it was. Another long moment passed in silence until the dog heard what sounded like faint footsteps in the hallway, on the other side of the doorway. Danny glanced over nervously as the footsteps grew louder and louder, standing up when the footsteps stopped again, and he watched as the doorknob turned. Danny let out a relieved sigh when the door opened, revealing Peter had apparently returned. The young man smiled apologetically before asking him to come outside for a minute. Is there something wrong? Danny asked anxiously, as he hesitated, looking back over at the bed where his friend was still fast asleep. I need to tell you something, but I don't want to bother him, the man said with a hushed tone. We can stand outside the doorway if you want. I guess that will work, Danny replied simply, heading over to the doorway as Peter beckoned him outside. The young man closed the door quietly, leaving it open just a crack. No doubt, just in case anything happened and they needed to get in. So what's going on, Peter? I just got reports from one of my fellow friends saying that a group of our own men are looking for him, the man said with a frown. They're not too far off. Stampy? How close are they? The dog asked quickly. I don't know, the man replied as he shook his head. Still, it doesn't look like they found where we were keeping him yet, though. How long do we have to here, then? Danny asked him hurriedly. We may have to move somewhere safer in the morning, the man replied, to ensure that we're not discovered and no one heard Stampy. Danny nodded. So you won't be far tonight, then? Yeah, the man said with a smile. Though you should get some rest. I don't know if I can after that news. Have you told Rose yet, Sam? The dog insisted. The man shook his head. I could try, but I don't want to risk anything happening if I can help it. Well, the dog replied quietly. Maybe one of your men could do that? Peter went to open his mouth in reply, unable to, when there was a loud crash inside of the room, along with a scream. Before Danny could hear the response, he pushed the door open and charged into the room, momentarily surprised at what he saw. Laying on the floor by the bed was a wide-awake Stampy, who looked pained as he struggled to sit up. His green eyes looking up at his friend briefly painted a smile on his face, that look quickly changed to fear. Danny looked over to see a man who seemed to be in his late 30s in a simple attire. His unkempt dark hair and dark gray eyes gleaming with anger, the thirst for revenge. What's the meaning of this? Peter demanded, standing beside the stunned Danny. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm only here welcoming our new guests to the home, the man said with a casual shrug. Well, obviously not, Peter pointed out, glancing briefly over at the cat, who had managed to sit up and now was leaning against the wall, pain still evident in his features. What are you here for? I'm here for my own reasons, and that's all you need to know, Peter, the other man said with a scowl. Now you best stay out of our way, or my men and I will deal with you. Your men? Danny asked nervously, when he suddenly heard the door slamming behind them as the glass shattered. A few ender pearls flew in. They were now surrounded on every side, the dog feeling very uneasy about the entire situation. Get Stampy out of here and through the secret entrance, Peter told the dog quickly, nodding over to the open doorway that appeared to have opened by the man who had entered the room. I'll deal with them. You're sure? Danny asked. I'm positive. Now go! Peter insisted firmly, as he extended a sword, pushing the dog back defensively. Danny didn't argue, as he ran over to his friend and held it paw to him. What's going on? The cat asked with him a look of confusion. Nothing good, Danny replied. You heard the man. We need to get you out of here. Where, though? The cat asked, when he accepted the dog's gesture and was lifted to his feet. Danny helped the cat towards the entrance, ignoring the commotion behind him. Somehow Peter was doing well with holding back all of the 5 men from pursuing them. For now, anyway. I don't know, but somewhere safe, Danny said hopefully. I hope so, the cat agreed with a sigh. They won't follow us, right? I hope not, Danny replied. Last thing I want is for you to be alone with those men. What about you? Stampy asked him. I'll do what I can to help, the dog said with a sigh. But I'm only one dog against any number of those guys. You'll figure it out. We all will, the cat said hopefully. Danny smiled and nodded encouragingly. Exactly. Should we continue? Yes. The answer is yes, once again. Chapter 10. They'll leave us at least 3 chapters left, which is fine. Danny helped the cat down the long hallway that didn't seem to have any end. There were very few torches along the walls of the walkway as he felt the cat leaning on him heavily, seeing him stumbling every few steps. It was obviously hard for his friend to be going on for this long when he hadn't moved much since what had happened to him with the Guardians. You don't look too good, Danny admitted to him after they rounded the 5th corner before the dog could see what looked to be a ladder ahead. I'll manage, the cat said quickly, his breathing heavy and labored as he shook his head. Maybe we should rest. I do not know what happened to that ladder. The owl has disappeared. No, don't do this to me. Why? Why? The dog insisted as he stopped walking for a moment. No, they still might be behind us, the cat argued. I don't want them to catch up to us. But this is clearly hurting you, Danny insisted. The cat smiled weakly. Those men will kill me if given the chance. I don't want to risk that or risk you having to see that happen. I won't let that happen, Danny demanded. The dog demanded. I know you'll try your best, the cat said with a chuckle. We're almost out anyway. Maybe we can find something we can do once we get out of this dark, dreary place. Fair, Danny replied with a sigh as he kept walking, pulling his friend closer to help him remain stable on his feet. Danny could feel his injured shoulder throbbing slightly, but he ignored it, knowing that it wasn't as important as what was happening right now. Danny. Stampy needed it right now, and his friends were counting on him to ensure nothing happened. Sure, Peter had took it onto himself to protect them both, but Stampy was his friend. He felt obligated to help him in any way he could. They weren't far from the ladder when Danny heard a subtle sound behind them. The dog froze as he glanced behind him over his shoulder. At first, he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. No men were chasing them down the corridor. No Peter coming to meet up with them. There was absolutely nothing. Danny wasn't sure what he should feel about that. How did a rabbit get down here? The cat asked with a slight bemused tone as the dog looked down to see. Yes, indeed. It had been a light brown rabbit making all that noise all the time. It must have burrowed down here for some shelter, I guess, Danny replied with a shrug. Relieved and slightly embarrassed, I spelled that wrong, to head himself, for jumping at a mere rabbit. The rabbit was no threat to them, and neither they to it. As the rabbit bounded down the hallway, the dog led the cat to the ladder. Yeah. That paragraph went wrong. Do you want to go first or me? The cat asked with uncertainty. We don't know what's up there. The dog frowned simply. I don't hear anything suspicious, the cat replied. I'm sure it's fine though. Maybe you should go up first, just in case some guys do decide to make themselves known in the hallway, Danny stated. It's nighttime now, so be careful. You won't be far, the cat Danby assured her with a sincere but tired smile. No doubt the cat was really struggling with the pain and exhaustion he was feeling, having had walked far more than his body was ready for at that time. Please be careful, Danny insisted, as the cat grabbed the first rung and began to lift himself slowly up the ladder. Be fine, Danny, you'll see, the cat said slowly, as he focused on getting higher up the ladder, till he made it to the top. He put his paw on the bottom of the trapdoor as he shoved it open as moonlight poured into the dimly lit area. However, before the cat could pull himself up or Danny could react, arms reached down and grabbed the startled cat and yanked him up to the surface, slamming the trapdoor behind him. Stampy! Danny shouted as he climbed up the ladder, ignoring the piercing pain in his shoulder as he was transmitting. He didn't care. Something was happening up there, and he needed to stop it. The dog could hear voices faintly above the trapdoor as he went to push it open, but he found that he couldn't. Had someone blocked the exit to the trapdoor, leaving him separated from his friend? What were they doing to him? Danny heard a faint, muffled scream through the trapdoor, which was followed by a cry of pain as the dog frantically tried to come up with ideas. Danby, what's going on? Danny hollered out loud, wondering if the man could hear him. They did. They were completely ignoring him. Maybe they thought they didn't need to. They had him trapped down here after all. Well, at least, so they thought. The dog, Danny, quickly hopped down the ladder to the dirt floor below as he grabbed his shovel. Partially amused by the ignorance these men had sometimes, he'd find a way out of this, even if he had to dig his way out. It was his only way to help his friend. So, without another thought, Danny began to dig a staircase up to the surface, heading how he could still hear his friend's stifled, muffled cries at the man's mocking laughter from above. They were hurting Simply, who was already injured as it was. He had to do something. Finally, he was able to break himself out to the surface as the moonlight poured into the hole that he had created, and he climbed out, finding that he was in a clearing with an activated portal to one side. On the other side of the clearing were the crowd of men surrounding a huddled form of stamping cat. Danny watched in dismayed horror as most of the men stepped aside by the command of one as an iron dagger was extended, causing his friend, who was already in pain, not just from the burns and the guardians, but brutal beating the men had caused, gasp in fear. "Now, how about we finish this once for all?" the man with the dagger said as he lifted it over the shaking form of his friend. The dog could hear the teasing laughter of the other men. He charged at the man, knocking him out of the way before he could do any harm. "Not in my watch, you don't," Danny insisted angrily, as he stood between his friend and the men surrounding him. "Danny?" the cat asked weakly, his voice shaking, but it sounded relieved. For the moment, anyway. They hadn't won this battle yet. "What do you think you're doing?" the lean man sneered at the dog. "You have no right to get in our business." "Nor do you have any right to attack my friends," Danny said as he lifted his chin. "He's every reason to get what he deserves," the man snapped. "You have no right to get in our way." "I can and I will. You can't stop me," the dog said defiantly. The man laughed. "Push him aside. I'll take care of the little traitor." "I wouldn't be so sure of that," a voice said from behind the men, as they all froze in their tracks. Danny looked up to see 5 or 7 men standing behind them, led by Peter, who looked even taller and confident as ever. "Make us," the lead man sneered. "You deal with these guys," Peter said to his allies. "I'll make sure Danny and Stampy get out of this safely." "Yes, sir," one of the men said obediently. Danny's attention was soon diverted. He heard a groan from behind him. The dog turned to see the cat lying on his side, struggling but failing to sit up as the dog sat down to his level. "Mind if I help you?" the dog asked him. "You're already helping," the cat replied quietly. "You saved me." "No one is saved yet," Peter said from behind him. "I've set the portal to the lovely world. You need to get home, to your friends." "What about you?" Danny asked. "I'll be escorting the 2 of you," the man replied, as he helped the struggling and stumbling cat to his feet and toward the portal. Rose his orders. "All right." Danny nodded nervously as he looked over his shoulder. "They won't follow us, right?" "They'll try, but I have an idea of what to do to deal with them temporarily," the man mused smiled. "I guess we're gonna have to trust you then," Danny asked him. "Do you have a choice?" the man asked as he raised an eyebrow. "Well, technically we do," the dog said slowly. "But there's an obvious best choice." "Agreed," the man said with a nod as he looked over to the cat. "Think you can handle the journey with the state you're in?" "I don't know," the cat admitted stiffly as he looked over at his feet. "I don't want to stay here and risk getting killed either." "We'll be there with you, no matter what happens," Danny promised the cat. Stampy smiled and nodded. "Believe you, Danny." "Then let's go," Peter replied, matter-of-factly, as he grabbed the dog's arm and pulled him towards the portal, everything turning into a blinding whiteness as he heard a groan of pain nearby, but he couldn't register it. Everything seemed peaceful, bliss, perfect, no dangers, no threat, no conflict. Just peace, calm, silence, pure, absolute silence. Well, that wasn't very silent. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. And yeah, this is the second to last part, hopefully. I think I can get the rest of them done in the next one, if my storage will allow it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.